worlds for herself. The comfortable life with the luxuries Fabio had earned. She didn't have to work. She had free time to go to the gym, play racquetball, shop, cook, see friends, travel, have sex with her lover. And then the other world that she created with Robert Baker, who she believed was really her true soulmate. And at some point, she realized these two worlds, they couldn't continue to coexist. But like I said, she had a problem. And her problem was a money problem. She couldn't support herself. She didn't have a job. She liked to live well. They had really nice cars. I told you there were 4 members of the Sementilli family. Each of them had a car, so they had 4 cars. She liked to buy clothes, shoes, whatever she wanted. She enjoyed going on these fancy vacations, but she needed money. And divorce wasn't an option because she came from an Italian Catholic family, which she and Baker discussed in recorded lockup conversations, once again, that you're going to hear about. She also, as I mentioned multiple times, cared about appearances, and she knew if she divorced Fabio, who was so beloved, even by her family, he was someone who took care of her family when they needed it. For someone with no future, a sex offender, a registered sex offender like Robert Baker, she would be disowned. She would be shunned. She would be cut out from her social circle, and especially from her Italian family, who loved Fabio like a son. So this leads us to the issue of motive. And as you heard during jury selection, motive is not an element we have to prove, but it's a big issue in this case. Financial gain as a special circumstance is one of the motives in this case. So she and Baker decided that Fabio was getting in the way of their future plans to be together, for her to become Mrs. Baker. If she divorced Fabio, she was going to lose her social standing and many, if not all, of her friends. Her family would never forgive her, and they would never accept somebody like Robert Baker, who, as I said, was nothing like Fabio. But if her beloved husband was murdered, people would feel sorry for her. She would be a victim. And therefore, they might forgive and accept what they would think were just poor decisions by somebody who was a sad, grieving widow. Also, as you're going to hear, if Fabio was murdered, she stood to inherit a great deal of money through Fabio's insurance policy, his stock options, and other assets he had set up through his hard work for his family's benefit. That was the whole point of leaving the hairdressing world to become a VP in this big company. And the defendant realized that the only way to maintain a reputation as Fabio's devoted wife and a mother to their children without the risk of turning everyone against her was to become a victim. The only way to get rid of Fabio and shed her old life without losing the lifestyle to which she was accustomed was to kill her husband. So instead of being seen as this self-centered, ungrateful liar and cheat, everyone would feel sorry for her because she would become Fabio's devastated widow who lost the love of her life. And what you're going to learn very quickly from the evidence is that the defendant is a master at manipulation and also a very convincing actor. In fact, you're going to hear she bragged about what a great actress she is to certain witnesses in this case, and that she used Fabio's murder so she could get a deal on a new car for her daughter when her daughter got in an accident, and to buy herself a brand new Mustang. And so at some point in 2016, a conspiracy was happening. The defendant and her lover killed Fabio in order to create their life together. True to form, the defendant left it to someone else to do her dirty work for her. She left it up to Baker to determine how to get the job done. He was a criminal. He had friends. He had ways of getting things like this done. And as you heard, according to conspiracy law, you don't have to know everybody in the conspiracy. You don't have to be friends with them. You don't have to know what role they're going to play. Robert Baker, who had friends who were loyal to him, like a young guy named Christopher Austin, who would do whatever Baker asked him to do and not ask a lot of questions. He was Baker's patsy, I'm going to call it. And at the end of last year, 2024, law enforcement finally had put together sufficient evidence to arrest and charge Baker's crime companion after 7 years of only having the defendant and Baker charged on this case. They finally thought that they had sufficient evidence to arrest who they knew went to the crime scene with Baker, this guy, Chris Austin. He was initially investigated by Detective Mitzi Roberts, you're going to hear about. She started putting records together, evidence together, but it was thin. And then you're going to hear after she retired, Detectives Farrell and Byers dug in a little deeper, got more records, and came across some more evidence that they believed was sufficient in order for them to set up an operation in Vancouver, Washington, where Christopher Austin was now living with his wife and baby. You're going to hear that at the time of the murder, he actually lived in Alaska. This is Chris Austin. You're going to hear that LAPD officers from Robbery Homicide Division, where Detective Roberts worked and where Detective Farrell and Byers worked, took a team of officers, went up to Vancouver, Washington, coordinated an operation with law enforcement up there where they knew Austin was living, and they arrested him. And they placed him in a cell, you're going to hear, with an undercover law enforcement agent who posed as his cellmate. You're going to hear that this is a completely legal type of undercover operation that is sometimes used by law enforcement. And you're going to hear that Austin made various statements to his, what he thought was his cellmate, his cellie. And he only told a very small part of the story because he was very hesitant to speak, as you can imagine, to someone he didn't even know about this murder he had committed. It was, as you'll hear, his first arrest.